Okay, well, we might as well get started, and then if other people come in, they can dare to sit closer to the speaker. So I just want to thank everybody for coming today, and today, as you probably all know, we have Tracy Trothen, who's an associate professor in the School of Religion, and this is a topic that I've been really excited about learning more about, and we're really glad to have you here. Thank you, and your entourage for dedicating your noon hour to this topic and to the speaker series today. So, thanks.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and yes, I invited three students from Queen's to come with me who've taken courses in transhumanism and religion with me. So I was absolutely thrilled that they were all able to do it because I asked them, I have to admit, just last week, it occurred to me finally, oh, well, this would be natural, make it so much more interesting to be able to get the perspectives of a few others who have really grappled with this work. So Colin here is in third year at Queen's and was in my course last term in the fall on transhumanism and religion, and did some awesome work on Buddhism and cognitive enhancement. So we'll get to hear a bit about that from him. And over here on my right, we have two MA students, Bryn and Max, who are doing a course with me. It's just the three of us this term. It's great. It's a real outstanding opportunity for me. And we're looking at human enhancement technologies and religion, especially Christianity. So what I want to do first is just tell you what transhumanism is, and then we'll move into it and give you some examples of enhancement technology that is out there and that we're anticipating, and then we'll look at, well, sort of spread throughout, we'll look at how religion intertwines with it and what it has to do with it. Have any of you heard of transhumanism before? A new term, pretty much? I think it's going to get to be a more and more known term, but in your courses too, transhumanism was not a known term, right? No. So, I'm going to give you the definition that we include in the American Academy of Religion, which has about 10,000 scholars and academics attend it every year in November. That's our main meeting place, and it moves around usually in the US. Every now and then it comes up to Canada, and usually we get the lowest turnout there because who wants to go somewhere in Canada in November, apparently, is the word down there. So we usually are in the States somewhere. And they have a number of different groups at the AAR, which specialize in different aspects of religion and different issues. And one of the many groups is the Transhumanism and Religion group, and I'm involved with that. So the definition that we have up for transhumanism there, I think is one of the best ones out there, and what it says is, transhumanism or human enhancement refers to an intellectual and cultural movement that advocates the use of a variety of emerging technologies. The convergence of these technologies may make it possible to take control of human evolution, providing for the enhancement of human mental and physical abilities deemed desirable, and the amelioration of aspects of the human condition regarded as undesirable. So the focus of transhumanism is on getting rid of those things that are assumed to be unnecessary limitations of being human. For example, and perhaps most prominently, our mortality. So do we need to die? Do we want to die? And the assumption is, no, we don't want to die, and we don't need to die, that we can cure aging. Also, things like, do we want to be stronger? Well, of course we want to be stronger. Do we want to be faster? Do we want to think more quickly? Do we want to be able to control our emotions more? All of these things have been assumed to be quite desirable. So that's on the list of most transhumanist leaders like Nick Bostrom and Ray Kurzweil and some others. It's interesting because to date, transhumanism has mainly been a white man's movement, Euro-American, for a lot of reasons that we'll probably touch on today in the next number of minutes. But there's a lot of really promising work out there too in technology, in terms of how do we make things more convenient for ourselves? How do we make things more stimulating? How do we make ourselves better physically, healthier? But what isn't being asked so much is, what are all the implications of all these different technologies that we have? And exactly what is it that we're getting on board with without even maybe explicitly agreeing to it or talking about it yet? And why religion? Because religions provide different lenses through which to see human enhancement technologies, and can help us ask different critical questions, especially about what does it mean to be humans? So what things will enhance us? What things will make us better humans? So instead of just assuming that we all agree on and know what things make us better as humans, or even that we know what it means to be human, the different religious traditions and perspectives can help us raise up questions about that, about what it means to be human, and about what will potentially make us better or not, or how we know what makes us better. So it's complicated, it's a huge area. What we thought we'd do to start off is to, first of all, just ask each of these three to comment on one thing that really hooked them in the Transhumanism and Religion course that they've been doing or done, what drew them in. So that's the first thing. Then after that, we're going to present to you some examples of enhancing technologies, so you can know what it is that we're talking about, that's out there, that's real, and that we're anticipating. So who'd like to start? What hooked you? Start over here.
I can start. I guess for me, one of the biggest things about transhumanism that is so interesting is the kind of visceral or gut reaction that you get when you hear about a lot of these technologies. And to me, what's interesting is kind of like interrogating and questioning, well, why am I reacting that way? So when you hear about designer babies, or terms like liberal eugenics, or uploading minds, or cyborgs, for me anyway, there was an automatic reaction, and it's kind of thinking through, okay, well, what brought me to thinking that way? And that's where religion or culture can really play in, because religion and culture kind of has a part to play about what we think about human nature, what we think about what humans are, and the kind of limits that we want to put on those kinds of technologies. And it just, informs that visceral reaction that we get. So that's what got me hooked.
Thanks, Max.
Yeah, for me, it was more a question of the issues of gender that surround the transhumanist movement. So as Tracy mentioned, it is mostly a white male technophile sort of position to take. And many of the men involved with the transhumanist movement are really quick to shrug off our bodies, or the importance of being embodied. Something you'll probably hear us talk about a lot in this discussion is the concept of mind uploading, whereby humans can convert their consciousness into a computer and thus live forever, or not forever, but a long time as a computer form. And this does away with the body, and a lot of the great critique that comes from religion, and particularly feminist Christian theologians, is about the importance of our bodies and the importance of being embodied, and why how we interact with the world in embodied forms allow us to shape our own perspective. So as a woman, you can't just drop off everything about your personality that's shaped by your womanhood. And unless we learn to interrogate the existing prejudices in our society now, there's no reason to think that when we, or if we become post-human, we'll be able to rid ourselves of prejudices then. So we need to think about why it is that some people are able to disavow the body and want to live forever, and why other people, like women and racialized groups, are really firmly implanted in that. So that's what kind of got me hooked in terms of discussions.
Thank you.
Yeah, and for me, my primary study at Queen's is Buddhism. I found Buddhism's relationship to the mind, to the consciousness, and to the self has been quite fascinating. And these are all three things that transhumanism tries to tackle. So there's been some relationship between Buddhism and science in terms of the Dalai Lama's Mind Life Institute, and trying to track how meditation can maybe affect the mind, affect the structures of the brain. And transhumanism kind of just takes this to a whole nother level, because no longer are we dealing with the brain that we have right now, but different manipulations of that brain through technology, through pharmaceuticals, and even through uploading it, as previously mentioned. What if mind is not localized in the brain anymore? How does that kind of factor into Buddhist views of the world? And that's kind of what hooked me.
Cool. Yes, so the idea, thank you very much, of transhumanism is that we're on our way. We're on a path that's unfolding, and as humans interface more and more with technology and machine, we are going to become more and more transhuman. And by trans, we're talking about is moving away from a conception of being human without the interface of technology, and changing. And some transhumanists are aiming, as you were hearing from these three, to a state that would be best understood as post-human. So not even necessarily recognizably human anymore. So a lot of the sci-fi movies that you've seen around cybernetics, the cyborgs, but looking at it in a more serious vein, because largely what can be assumed is that it really is all the domain of science fiction, that it's not real. But we're going to give you some examples soon that will show you that it really is real when we start thinking about it. And as we go along, if any of you have any questions, want to stop us and ask us something, please just indicate, let us know. We're happy to put ourselves on pause and have a conversation. A very nice informal number here, so we can do that and enjoy ourselves. I'm going to hand it over to Bryn at this point.
Yeah, so when I first began learning about transhumanism, there was some hesitancy on my part. As Tracy mentioned, it did feel and sound very much like science fiction, and there was a part of me that's informed by social justice and feminist Christian theology that thought, why is my time spent well basically engaging in the thought experiment of transhumanism? Like, this all sounds like a sci-fi movie. But I quickly realized that enhancement technologies are already so prominent that some of the goals of transhumanism, or at least markers of transhumanism to come, are already being reached. So I'd like to introduce a few examples of human enhancement already at work before I turn it over to Max and Tracy and Colin to discuss radical life extension, physical enhancement, and cognitive enhancement more specifically. So often where people start when we're talking about examples of physical enhancement is with Roger Bannister. He was an English distance runner who in 1954 ran what was called the Miracle Mile. So he's the first person to run a 4 minute mile in under, or 4 miles in under 4 minutes. There we go. So he was a medical student who applied his scientific knowledge around anatomy and physiology in order to figure out how he could run faster and how he could make his body better. So this is sort of a gateway to modernity and pursuit of sport through applied science. And there are a couple other enhancements of our bodies that are already at work. So one is LASIK enhancement. So the idea of having lasers cut into your eyes in order to be able to see better is something that would have sounded like it was out of a science fiction novel as well 50 short years ago. So this is something that is being done at a corrective level now, but it has changed how we think about eyesight. Tracy once pointed out to me that amongst Major League Baseball players, the average eyesight is far above 20/20 because everyone has had LASIK surgery to improve their vision. Also, even the use of vitamins, this is something that people did not have access to before, but is a sort of medical technology that we are able to ingest into our bodies that make them work better than they would without the vitamins. Hyperbaric chambers allow athletes to perform better in sports by using hyperbaric chambers before competing. Something that Tracy might go into in a little bit more detail is the super swimsuits you might have heard about in the Olympics, which could enhance performance significantly among swimmers. And the year that super swimsuits came out, records were broken non-stop because people were so much faster with these suits on.
But what is a super swimsuit?
So it is a type of, I think it's made by Speedo, and it's a type of swimsuit that adheres extremely closely to your body and makes you highly aerodynamic. And I think even it improves the performance of your muscles when you're swimming. So it really slims you down and makes you perform very effectively.
It's
in water.
petroleum based, and it improves your buoyancy, and it's longer, and it's technology really that interfaces with the body, but you can take it off and remove it. So it tends to elicit a less negative reaction amongst people. But it ended up, as Bryn was saying, shattering all kinds of records in 2010, and was eventually banned in competitions because of that. And there's social justice issues attached to it too, because as someone said once in an interview with the news, there's nothing wrong with using these swimsuits. Everybody can have one. They only cost about $400 US each, and they're good for 2 to 3 competitions.
Of course.
Right. You got it, yes.
Yeah, so there are definitely questions of access that inform a lot of our conceptualizations of transhumanism. The last example I'm going to point to is so-called cheetah legs used by Oscar Pistorius, who won in the Paralympic Games, wanted to compete in the Olympics, and did so on prosthetic limbs, which also raises questions of, is this a transhuman technology, or is this simply a technology that is allowing people who are born in different bodies to compete fully in sports? And how can we say to folks that they aren't allowed to use certain technologies if they were born this way? And that's another example that's sort of in the public sphere that you might have seen on the Olympics, in which transhumanism is actually, or at least some of the values around human enhancement are already at work. So I don't know if I want to turn it over to Max for radical life extension.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a few different ways, or at least 2 main ways, that transhumanists kind of envision the idea of radical life extension. So one of them is a more, I guess, biological way. So essentially, as our parts deteriorate and become useless, then we slowly but surely replace the parts that are defective under this model, to eventually become essentially a kind of cyborg version of yourself. Some also, for example, say that we could use stem cell research and genetic engineering in order to kind of create new parts from stem cells and replace those parts inside our own bodies. But the more controversial, I guess, version of radical life extension that a lot of transhumanists talk about is the virtual immortality, which essentially would entail, in some accounts, for example, like taking a scan of your whole body, of your whole brain, a very, very detailed scan of your brain to kind of look at all of the different networks and then kind of transfer that into a computer. So that's the whole concept of uploading your mind, is having a kind of scan of your neurology and then transferring that onto a computer and then hoping that the person on the other side is still going to be the same person. Essentially that they were inside their own body. In terms of virtual immortality, some people say, for example, that you could like make backups of your own mind or copies of your own mind. So it kind of also touches on, well, you know, what would reproduction look like, for example, in a virtual world? And then it also kind of brings up questions about like, okay, well, how would we relate with each other when some of us are computers, some of us aren't? How would we relate with each other if, you know, one of us was a cyborg or immortal? How would we, can we really actually separate the mind from the body, or is the mind and body a whole organism that you can't necessarily separate? So those are the kinds of questions that are brought up by the whole discussion around radical life extension.
Thanks. So I'm going to talk just a bit about some examples on the physical and moral level before Colin gets into some cognitive examples. So much of my research has been around sport, elite athletes, and religion, and the use of enhancement technology, because as Bryn was getting at, where we see a lot of enhancement technology first is in elite sport, because they're the most anxious to try it out, because that's where the records need to be broken, and where any enhancement that can give us just a few split seconds is huge and highly desired and sought after. So some have been saying, like Donna Haraway for decades, that we are all already cyborgs and have been for a number of years. And that's because something as simple as wearing prescription glasses is the interface of technology with our human bodies and becomes part of us, even though it's not sewn in literally. Contacts are even more closely part of us, right? Pacemakers, for some people, have technology inserted into our cells, or a shunt. So there's a lot of medical interventions that have seen technology become part of us in ways that have been life-giving, life-prolonging. And there are new things underway. So there is science. Scientists are exploring the whole concept of mind uploading, which seems like the most outlandish, freakish possibility here. And yet we saw a few videos that looked at and listened to some scientists talking about their research and showing how we have been progressing towards this. So it is